Another caller. Good evening, caller.
Hi, good evening. I lived right down the street from Franklin School. My son is a year old, and thinking about him going there gives me a lot of anxiety. Is there anything good that you can say about the elementary schools?
Yeah, the teachers. I think the teachers, if invested in, will carry the day. And the amounts of money we're talking about here are relatively small. For example, you might look at Newton North at $150 million to really fully fund the math program in the elementary schools would be $750,000 each year. If we did that, we would very quickly have a superlative math program in Newton. And I mean, I think we have a good education now, but it's got some weaknesses, especially in math. Okay? My son went through Underwood and he had a really great experience, and a bit weak in math, but I help with that, and parents can help with that individually, but we want it to be a core thing. So I think that it's not dismal, but I think that we have to have a resolve to put a small amount of money into programs, because we're putting a lot of money into architecture and buildings, which is great. It's where the kids go in the daytime. But if we're putting $150 million into Newton North and probably another $100 million into the other middle and elementary schools, we should very seriously think of putting $1 million a year into mathematics and science, and probably another $1 million into technology. They're one of order of 1% of the current budget, and we should not forget the programs. And so it's really important to me, and I hear the concern, and I have it, and in fact, you're amongst thousands of parents who are concerned about this right now, that we're not putting these relatively small amounts of money in to solve these fundamental program problems. So I would say we got to get this going. I would say vote for me in the upcoming election. I'd say vote for anyone who thinks that programs should be invested in Newton. And you've got to take it to the school committee and the parents, and there's a lot of scientists and mathematicians and that, but every parent should show this concern. You pick up the phone, you turn up at the school committee meetings, because if I get elected, then I'm 1 vote out of 8. So I look to the community for support to try and push this.
You know, in all due respect, I have never heard any school committee member talk about this issue, or any issue as far as education itself. I mean it. They talk about a lot of things, but they don't talk about what the meat of the whole job is about, education.
The school committee has a strategic task in general to set the direction for the school system.
But maybe they're not capable. Maybe, is there any expertise there? I mean,
well, we have some. I think there's enough people on the school committee who are ready to go in the right direction that I can help shift. I mean, there's like a center of gravity. Yeah. And also, they're very aware that we got a problem. And in a political battle, they're going to try and diminish the problem, okay, in the political stuff. But they know we have a problem. And so after the election, you know, it'll open up and say, well, maybe we should put some money in math and science.
After the election, if you get elected, because your opponent, and I read her perspective in today's paper, she never mentions anything about the shortfalls in the sciences and mathematics.
Right, right, and you'll see the political letters, like there was one from, I think it was Julie Salles, she's the co-president of the Newton South PTSO, saying that she thinks that math and science is perfectly fine. You know, our kids are going and becoming doctors. See,
I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of politics in Newton schools.
Right.
And years ago, it wasn't that way.
Right.
I mean, you had some outstanding people serving the Newton schools.
And I'm not a politician.
Today, it's more politics and agendas, is from my perspective, from looking at it the way I see it and watch it. They're more concerned about certain agendas and whatnot, you know what I mean, than they are about the overall education of students.
Right. An important thing is drawing from, the community is very rich in talent, actually. And if it became easier to get on the school committee and you didn't have to go through the political hazing that you go through now with, you know, trying to beat a well-established political network or a well-established viewpoint that selects the candidates, if more people were welcome we would benefit enormously, I think.
Can I say something else? You may not agree with it because you served on the PTOs.
Yeah.
You were president of the PTO.
Of Underwood After School.
All right, now let me tell you what I've heard for years. A lot of people go to these PTO meetings and they're discouraged from coming. In other words, there's a group at every PTO, from what I understand, that more or less discourages participation from newcomers coming in. In other words, this is our ball field, this is our ball game, and we don't need you here.
That might be the case. It wasn't my experience.
No.
I went through, and all of the PTOs no doubt have different character, but at Underwood it was very open. And in fact, I was given a good example of how to, we had Peter Roby, for example, the sports director at Northeastern, who was PTO co-president and really great. And he really was a terrific example to show how to include people, how to solve problems, and so on. So I was kind of inspired by people actually getting in their work, and that drew me in, actually.
Let me ask you now, what do you do for a living?
I'm an engineer, so I do web information engineering.
But aren't you an associate with Boston University?
Well, I was at BU as an assistant professor of physics, and I've spent a lot of time in academic physics. I spent 15 years doing nuclear physics, theoretical nuclear physics, teaching, so I know what the classroom's like, and I know what research is like. I wrote 20 research papers, for example, and then I went into industry and I worked in really an applied mathematical role initially, and then in a combination of that and software engineering in machine vision and robotics, digital imaging at Polaroid and Kodak. So I've had a pretty good broad experience in industry as well. So I know when kids graduate and they go to college, I know the kinds of jobs that they'll go into. So, you know, you cover the spectrum. And that kind of experience in research science like that, with, you know, an advanced degree and so on, is something that's missing on the school committee right now.
So the Newton Tab endorsed you.
Yeah, they were really great, and they really covered everything that I've done. That was a really high information endorsement.
Enthusiastically endorsed by the Newton Tab. Epstein's potential contributor to the new school committee. Go beyond his math and science expertise. He's an independent thinker who will speak out when appropriate and will work cooperatively with his colleagues.
Right.
And I would say that, from what I know about you and meeting you over a lot of times over the years, that's the type of person you are. You are a...
Right, I like working with people.
And you haven't been out there throwing bombs or bad-mouthing anything.
No, it's not. I mean, I wasn't brought up like that. You know, we were brought up in the Australian school system. Teamwork was really important. Everyone played team sports. That was a fundamental thing. It was integrated into the elementary schools. Our teachers all taught us sports.
How about the politics?
In Australia? Oh, they're crazy. Australian politics is not something I would look at and say that's wonderful. We got 3 Nobel laureates in medicine. But you know, Aussies do a lot of really good technical stuff. Yeah. They invent things. They make good wine.
Well, is there anything you want to say to our audience?
Well, I'd say that we've focused a lot on the kind of math and science, technology and so on, but I think there's also a breadth of experience that I bring to this. I mean, I grew up in one entirely different school system. I spent 2 years in England at Oxford in their university system. I've been around the United States in different places. I've got a broad experience of life, but I worked in the Underwood after-school program. I was president of that for 2 years during the recession, which was a very difficult time where we were trying to expand programs and keep staff. You know, I've been involved in property management for 20 years. I mean, I even got a real estate salesman license once because I was interested in that.
Well, it's up to the voters now. That you've got somebody new that will bring on change, and I'll tell you, the school committee does need some new blood, some new enthusiasm.
Right, and the thing is, you know, I can work with all those folks there. We've got some good folks there, and we can figure this out.
Good luck.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
Again, good night. Thank you. Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Okay, well, we'll see.
This is all going on.
Yeah.